Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Disability Attorneys for the Community. I'm attorney Randall Mansour, one of the attorneys and co-founding partners at Disability Law Group. And today I'm joined by Jen Baker. Jen is an advocate and investigator at Disability Rights of Michigan, and she works to protect the rights of incarcerated individuals with disabilities, particularly those with severe mental illnesses. Jen, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
And Jen, before we dive into the incredible work that you are doing today and have done for a while now, can you share a little bit about your personal journey and what led you to advocate, basically work for prisoners in the prison system?
Sure. Again, thank you first for inviting me. I got a chance to look at the Disability Law Group website and view some of the client testimonials, and it looks like you guys are doing great work. And anytime that we have the opportunity to collaborate with people doing like-minded work, I think it benefits all of our clients. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
As far as my advocacy work in the prison system, I honestly, I kind of just fell into it. Um, I was a CO 27 years ago, a corrections officer 27 years ago, and I became a corrections officer because I was a young mom who needed a job and MDLC was hiring. Um, I didn't set out to work in prisons, but I don't really think that anybody really sets out like as a child saying, I want to work in a prison when I grow up. But I've always been drawn to fight for people who are um, underdogs, people who have been cast aside. And I thought that there might be a way to do that in working in the prison system, kind of coming at it from the perspective of being one of the good ones that could make change. And my perspective changed pretty quickly.
And as you mentioned, this was 27 years ago as a corrections officer. How did that experience influence your outlook and basically ultimately push you towards the work that you're doing now? I know you mentioned this kind of you just needed a job at that time, but once you were actually in it, how did that ultimately push to the work that you're doing now?
My experience as a corrections officer in MDOC was honestly more than just not great. Um, it's a toxic environment and it exacts a heavy mental and emotional toll on anybody who walks through the gates. From day one at the Corrections Academy, corrections officers hear two things over and over. It's like kind of like indoctrination. Um, you aren't their counselor, which basically means you you don't talk to them. You talk at them. Um, it's something to do with not seeing people as equal human beings, and their belief that dynamic needs to exist. And the second thing is they've got nothing coming, as in incarcerated individuals. That's probably the one sentence I remember stronger than anything else working in MDOC is they've got nothing coming. There are good officers. I know I'm saying some very negative things, but there are good officers. I was a good officer, but the system itself thrives on kind of silence and secrecy. And you can't do the job without witnessing cruelty, and you can't speak up without consequences. So that changed my opinion of whether I would be able to continue working in the prison system. I was there for 6 years, and it was a steady decline until I had to leave.
Sure, took a toll on you. And for listeners who may be unfamiliar, can you briefly tell us a little bit about Disability Rights of Michigan and the mission of the Protection and Advocacy or PNA system in general?
Absolutely. To understand PNA, you have to start with Willowbrook State School, which is a children's state school in New York. And in the 1970s, there was an expose. A camera was brought in and got footage uh, of children in squalor in their own waste, naked in hallways. And when the public saw that, there there was outrage and there was an outcry for change. We kind of finally, as a culture, had to come to a reckoning with the way that we treat people with disabilities. And that's where the P&A system was created and enshrined in federal law to be an independent watchdog so that no one is ever trapped again in an environment like that without a voice. And there's a P&A in every state and territory. We fight for education, access, jobs, legal rights, and community inclusion. And we investigate in places that most people never see the inside of. We go into psychiatric hospitals, group homes, and prisons, of course, to ensure that people with disabilities are treated with dignity and respect. And I would imagine all P&As, just like Disability Rights Michigan, monitor in those facilities because we know now what happens because of Willowbrook when nobody's watching. And our goal is for there to never be another Willowbrook.
This was almost 50 years ago. Think about that. That's
50
wild.
years ago.
Yeah. And you hold a unique position at DRM, and you're a dedicated advocate focused on people with disabilities in Michigan's prison system. What does your day-to-day look like in this type of work at DRM?
When I started this work here at DRM, I had 27 years behind me from the last time I had walked into a prison. And I carried a lot of trauma from that time and a lot of guilt. And I think the first time I actually walked into a prison again after 27 years to have a moment of realization that those 6 years weren't wasted. And I had thought all along they were. And that MDOC trained me for this. They gave me the tools to uncover things that they were trying to hide, corruption, abuse, and to force accountability. They gave me that, and that was a game changer for me. I remember reading like a quote that was something like, "It's not the nightmare that happens to you, but what you do with it afterward." So that was just a huge moment of change for me. And then I had a different attitude about going into prisons and the work that I do every day now. There are 26 prisons in Michigan, and 6 of those are in the Upper Peninsula. Of all of those, there's one women's facility, and there are 2 facilities, one at the women's facility and then one other facility that house youth offenders charged as convicted as adults from the ages of 15 to 17. I monitor in those facilities from everything to accessibility and medical care to prolonged isolation, mental health treatment, and I speak directly with a lot of incarcerated individuals to hear their experiences and to hear their voices, which are largely unheard, and that drives this work. When I'm not monitoring in prisons, I'm working on individual cases and systemic projects, and much of that work comes directly from monitoring in the prisons. The cases range from something as basic as a wheelchair brake being fixed to a death investigation. And every issue ties back to dignity and safety. And then I'd say that my goal is to address immediate harms while pushing for broader changes to make sure that those same problems don't keep happening.
Makes sense. If
Disabilities, honestly, in prison are a matter of survival.
right. Yeah. And from my understanding, and I could be wrong, but I believe your position didn't even exist before you joined DRM. Is that correct? And if so, can you talk about how the opportunity came to be and how your background shaped you into this role? And obviously, this is a new role for the organization. So how did this position come to be at DRM?
DRM has a litigation history with MDOC, mostly class action
Uh,
and very successful history. But there wasn't a lot of work, but like individual casework, really. We go everywhere where a person receives services for a person with disabilities receives services. And so that limits the scope of the work that we do. And our board of directors recognized that people in prisons were being underserved. And kind of at the same time, maybe like Kismet, DRM was looking for an advocate for the community and institutional rights team.
mm,
And I don't think that in any way it was specifically prison focused. But when my history came up, it was beneficial to both sides. And it was kind of a solution to what they were looking for. And once I began monitoring in prisons, it became clear right away that the need for rights advocacy is so high in the prison system that having a dedicated investigator doing this work serves a huge population while also preventing sometimes litigation. Uh,
yeah,
that we can get something litigation, as you know, takes a really long time.
right.
And in the meantime, people are suffering. And having a dedicated investigator trying to cooperate with MDOC as much as possible gets a lot of things done without litigation. So I had multiple positive benefits.
That's great. There are known disparities in treatment of incarcerated people with disabilities. In your work, what systematic changes do you see more frequently? I mean, at this point, we see it all the time on the news. So, what challenges do you see when you have these incarcerated individuals with disabilities in the prison system?
Carceral systems are notoriously secretive and they do not like outsiders. They don't want people telling them how to run their prisons. And so there's an automatic pushback even when we have suggestions that could benefit the department and incarcerated individuals. It's also very difficult because it's an unsympathetic population. It's very difficult to sometimes to advocate for incarcerated individuals, that kind of attitude of if you can't do the time, don't do the crime type of thing. These people are all dangerous and should be removed from the community, that taxpayers' resources shouldn't be going, you'll hear things like, I don't have health insurance. Why should this person be getting things that I can't get or that my children can't get? So we're constantly fighting against those things. And then the legislature, they're answering to their constituents. So they also have to be careful about balancing the money and resources allocated to the prison system to improve the prison system against the needs of their own communities, against the corrections union, against MDOC leadership. So it's a combination of things that make it a uniquely challenging population to advocate for.
And your work has shed some light in the lack of appropriate mental health support within the system. What are some of the most concerning patterns that you've observed?
One of the biggest things is that there aren't people with severe mental illness housed in segregation units. That is unequivocally not true. I monitor in segregation units all the time. I even go to the Upper Peninsula where the majority of long-term administrative segregation units are located. And it is an overwhelming uh, population of people with severe mental illness who are isolated. It exacerbates mental illness. They're not receiving the appropriate mental health services there. It's maintenance care. Um, and if if it was somebody who doesn't already have a severe mental illness, it's certainly something that the conditions can create mental illness. That and the lack of consistent mental health services, really engaged mental health services programming. There's no quick fix for severe mental illness. And I want to say I do my best to not demonize MDOC. They're human beings. I don't think that they're intentionally setting out to treat people like they're not human beings or to make situations worse. There are some people that do have that do come from that perspective. But overall, I try and keep in mind that MDOC is made up of human beings who sometimes feel helpless to make any changes. MDOC was never meant to be the largest psychiatric hospital in the state of Michigan, the largest entity who provides mental health services in the state of Michigan. They are meant to be a carceral system. They are not meant to be a healthcare provider for serious long-term serious medical needs or serious mental health needs. I was a corrections officer. I was trained as a corrections officer in the academy and annual training. The bare minimum mental health care requirements for training each year are not enough for custody staff to understand how to work with people with severe mental illness and treat their behaviors more as manifestations of their mental illness and that they're working with a unique population instead of seeing that as manipulative behavior that should be responded to with punishment. So they were never meant to be in this position and they're not equipped for it.
Makes sense. What changes would you like to see in how Michigan prepares incarcerated individuals for parole, especially those with disabilities?
Michigan has a long way to go. They are in the bottom of the middle half of all states for the effectiveness of their parole system for people with serious medical conditions and particularly for people with severe mental illness. Michigan does have a mental health parole. It's called a D47. It's a deferred parole, and the deferral is related to finding appropriate housing and community-based services. They do contract with a private company to find the housing, to engage with community services, to provide the first 6 months of case management. But Michigan experiences the same crisis that most other states are experiencing. And that's not just with prisons, but psych hospitals, community mental health systems. Placement is it's very difficult to find placement. Also, in MDOC, there are acute mental health units, and there is no difference for someone going to a parole interview who has severe mental illness, is not stabilized, is not oriented to reality. There are no accommodations made for those individuals, no preparations made for those individuals. And I've seen many parole determinations where the exact wording of the determinations relates to their mental illness. This person is not stabilized. We're not confident that they won't be a threat to themselves or the community. They should continue attending groups, taking their medications. We'll see you in 12 months. And I see those same people cycle through over and over again, long after their earliest release date, denied parole over and over when they aren't able to meaningfully advocate for themselves independently. And DRM has stepped in to that role, but that's not realistic. Basically, it's started out as we're going to show you that this works. We're going to push you to use avenues that you have available to you that you are not using. And then with that evidence, hopefully, show legislators, show MDOC leadership, show the Michigan Parole Board that there are things that work and that support people with severe mental illness.
And you specifically have taken steps to stand alongside clients at parole interviews. Why is that presence so important? And what are you hoping changes in the near future could be when it comes to standing alongside these clients? What do you you know really what's your main goal for being behind them and alongside them during the interviews?
I don't think people without disabilities can possibly understand what it's like living with a disability. You don't know your privilege because it's a privilege and it's been something you've always had. So it's difficult to recognize the things that people need to have equity. People would imagine that a parole hearing looks the same for everyone and should be the same for, and that's equity, but it's not equity. If the individual has schizophrenia and isn't stabilized,
Right.
uh, they may have been told that parole interviews are remote via monitor. That person may have been told when the TV is speaking to you, it's not really speaking to you, ignore it. And so I might have a client standing there who won't look at won't engage with the monitor because they've been told not to. They've been told that's not real. Or um, an individual may decompensate in the interview. I've learned from that to pick up on triggers. For example, I had a client who believed that she had a lot of children. She believed she was in labor and in delivery a lot. She believed she had a lot of children and that they had been taken away from her by MDOC. And the parole board member was talking to her about if she returned to the community, different things about her family support systems. And she made a comment about the paperwork showing that she had no children. And things went south very quickly from there. It was difficult for me to have a way to communicate with the person right there, with my client right there, that that's not part of the story. That's not part of her history. Without upsetting my client, there was a back and forth for a minute, and then she completely decompensated in the parole interview and had to be taken out by custody staff in restraints, which is a whole look for
Right.
the parole board member. Um, there are people that are not comfortable in a formal environment. Can we get them moved to an informal environment? Can we get an in-person parole hearing instead of the remote parole hearing? Things like that are what provide equity and had not existed at all. But slowly, the parole board is working with us on those kinds of things, recognizing those kinds of things. And I would like to say Brian Shipman is the parole board chair for the state of Michigan. And he is in my opinion, a profoundly compassionate man who has done everything he can within the parameters that are set for the pro board to make these accommodations available. For example, incarcerated individuals who go before the parole board are only allowed to have one personal representative. So if they want to have a family member there, they can't have anybody else there. He has said on top of them having somebody there from their life to support them, I can be there as well. That's completely separate from the way things normally go. Um, and he has said to me that the parole board is uncomfortable when somebody comes before them that they know is not able to advocate for themselves, not stabilized. Uh, it leaves them in a horrible position as well. So he's acknowledged that there needs to changes need to happen. It's just a matter of getting those things to happen. A lot of that involves legislation. Some of it could come with cooperation from MDOC and the mental health services department in MDOC. along with the parole board, and to, we've started that, and we're willing to sit down with them and talk about the things that we could get accomplished together to make some of those changes because legislation, just like litigation, is so slow.
And I was doing this work, it must take a toll um, at times. What helps you stay grounded and hopeful?
There are good days, there are wins. I think that is for anybody who does work in human services and advocacy work, that I've had clients that I wasn't able to get the outcome that they were hoping for. And it's very hard to tell them that, but their response is always, I just want to thank you for your help. I want to thank you for listening to me. Somebody cared. No, nobody's cared before. I know that you care. I know that you did everything you could. And then the wins, the days that there are wins. I had a client that I've had for 5 years who is blind since birth. Um, he has worked with DRM consistently on trying to get systemic changes for people who are blind in MDOC. And he called me yesterday morning and told me that he got his parole. It was his first time going before the parole board. I think he's been incarcerated for 17 years. And
Wow.
I believe he's ready to return to the community. I think that he will benefit the community, particularly the blind community. And we would like to continue working with him. There are other uh, advocacy organizations, many of them founded by formerly incarcerated individuals, that I want to connect him with, who would also benefit from the amazing. He's sued MDOC and won over
Wow.
issues for the blind. So when there are things like that, when I hear about wins, when somebody calls me and says, actually, we helped get screen readers into MDOC. They've only just started, they're only at 3 facilities. But this man was not able to participate in his own defense in his original case and in his appeal. And for the first time ever, when the screen reader became available, he was able to review the entirety of his case in preparation for his parole interview. And the independence that gave him, and the dignity and also privacy. Before that, he has had to have another prisoner whose job assignment is to read for him, which provides no privacy for people who are blind. Things like getting those wins make up for the really hard days. I know that PNAs do incredible work. We make change, and it's a very tense time for the protection and advocacy system. So every single win is kind of what keeps us going emotionally right now in a unstable, federally funded environment.
It makes perfect sense. And, at Disability Law Group, we're huge believers in the power of community collaboration. From your perspective, how can DRM and DLG, our firm, continue working together to support people with disabilities?
I work with many advocacy groups who do like-minded work. And what I found is that these groups, whether it's a disability law group or another like grassroots organization, um, we all have unique areas of strength. And at the same time, we have the same population that we're serving. And we can build kind of a patchwork of if my client, if there's something that I can't get for my client, if my client, let's say, is returning to the community, they're re-entering the community, and they are somebody who went into the prison system receiving Social Security disability benefits. It may be very difficult for them to get back into the system, back into the community, and have their benefits restored. I don't always know where those resources are or where to start. That's definitely something that Disability Law Group knows more about than we do. There are reentry resources in the community that know more about reentry and places to go, little insider tips, knowing people
Yeah.
that just gives us a way to all it. We're all supporting the same population. So you're doing a different thing for the same population. If it's something that we can do to help your clients, it's something that you can do to help our clients or to help to educate us. It benefits everyone.
And Jen, a couple more thoughts. Just what's one message you hope listeners can take away from this conversation today?
I'd like to reflect on the one of the first questions you asked me, which was to give a little bit of information about the background of the protection and advocacy system. And I
Yeah.
mentioned Willowbrook. And I just mentioned that there is a very, very serious and real immediate threat to the sustainability of the protection and advocacy system. Without us, there really is no other watchdog like protection and advocacy. We have federal access authority to go in places no one else can do, go into who isn't uh, a state or federal employee. And we are independent of both to keep that transparency. So, kind of circling, coming full circle, the only thing that is going to make sure there's another Willowbrook is for the PNA system to stay alive and to thrive. And that's going to take the recognition and work of and fight of many people immediately.
And where can people learn more about disability rights of Michigan or get in touch if they or someone they know needs support?
Our website, drmich.org, has resources right on the site. There is an accessible web form. If you say don't want to call or it's the most accessible way for you, you can fill out a web form submission explaining what it is that you need or you're looking for. Otherwise, there's an 800 number. There is a local Ingham 517 area number, and that may just be, you can just call if you're looking for resources, if you're just looking for information, or if you're someone or you love someone or know someone, work with someone in the neighborhood who is being abused or neglected, um, whose rights are being denied, call us. And if there's anything that we can do to help, we're the likeliest people to be able to have the power, honestly, the power
Yeah.
to help. A range of ways to get a hold of us and a range of issues that we cover and can provide for the community.
Awesome. With that, thank you again, Jen, for taking the time to share your insights and experiences. The work you do is not only essential, it's of course inspiring. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please make sure to give us a follow-up to stay up to date with future conversations. And thank you all for listening. And until next time, be well and stay healthy. Thanks,
Thank
Jen.
you so much.